educate us about what exactly this diversity and inclusion is all about
today. I think in terms of a preamble and why sort of diversity and inclusion is so important and such an important conversation for all organizations, irrespective of the industry, irrespective of the domain, to be having, is because I think over a period of time, it's been proven that diversity has a business objective to it. It's not a good to have, it's a need to have. Now, of course, there are various schools of thought that exist about, why and, well, what if we don't have it, etc. I think the business objective that exists for, what would happen if, for example, diversity is not a priority, right? Or if it's not something that is an active conversation, is that you're actively not thinking about a large part of your population, whether it's gender diversity, whether it's ability diversity, whether it's regional diversity. Each aspect of diversity, it brings a unique flavor into the entire equation, which if you're not paying attention to, you're only drawing a part of the outcome of what you can derive. A simple example of that would be that back when I was in DIGO a few years back, and they have a sort of dedicated group that works on diversity and inclusion areas as well. One of the things that that group would often talk to leaders about is the fact that one big change that happened when the organization took on diversity goals, and especially when they took on gender diversity goals, was the bottom line actually improved, because suddenly you had included a voice that was not there in the past, that was able to bring business insights to the table that didn't exist before. Because of those business insights, there were certain decisions that were taken that led to a stronger profitability, that led to a stronger bottom line. And this is exactly a business objective, right? It's not a good to have, then it's a need to have. Similarly, in different organizations, there are different examples that exist about why diversity is important and what it sort of brings to the table in terms of very real value, and not just as something, that you think about, oh, this will be nice to have. So there's real value being created in that. On the other hand, I think inclusion is something that helps diversity be successful. If you think about a room, full of, full of, say, footballs, right? Or any other thing that's only of one color, and you put something of a completely different color, right? And how much will that stand out? Right. So if you put yourself in the shoes of something that stands out, or someone that stands out, how must that person be feeling, right? Will that person completely feel at home on day one? And if not, then what will be taken away from the value that person can bring to the workplace, right? And that's where I think inclusion plays a very critical role in making sure that everyone's able to bring their whole self to work, and thereby able to do the best work that they can. Because somewhere, if that inclusion aspect is not getting addressed, then you can have a lot of great diversity goals, you can have a lot of great diversity outcomes, but those may not necessarily translate into the maximization of the potential that diversity can have. And I think that's where inclusion is an accelerator for diversity in our opinion.
Fantastic. Would you mind sharing some of the best practices specifically in diversity and inclusion space with my audience?
Sure. I think when it comes to diversity and inclusion, one of the best, one of the most important best practices that I would say is that, and that's why even when I was talking about the preamble, I spoke about both the diversity and in the inclusion factor, because I think one thing that I've seen that happen, even in some forums that I've been a part of, where we discuss diversity and inclusion, is that sometimes there is a focus on diversity and certain types of diversity, but the focus on inclusion is not there that much, or it's a little bit more limited for that matter. So I think it's very important to have a focus on both diversity and inclusion. Otherwise, you're taking away the potential of diversity in a way. So I think that is a huge best practice, I would say. Another area where I've seen a lot of success emanate from is when you have leadership sponsorship. And true leadership sponsorship, not just in terms of, not just in terms of wordsmithing or in terms of sending out an email, but really walking the talk, right? And so a lot of times where I've seen success happen when it comes to diversity and inclusion areas is when the leader is taking an active interest in actually, activating diversity and inclusion. One of the very simple examples that I can talk about is one of the leaders that I worked with back in Diageo would make it a point that when she's hiring, for example, right, she wouldn't say that I need to have X number of positions filled with female candidates, but what she'll say is I want to ensure that I'm having a proportionate number of resumes come through that are female as well. Yeah. So it's about that platform for opportunities and not necessarily the selection part only, because at the end of the day, for it to be a successful business objective, you also need to be fair to what the role demands and to what is required from the role perspective, but to ensure that you're taking the entire pool into account and you're not just looking at a part of the pool. So that was one great example that I saw where where a leader was truly walking the talk. So I think having leadership sponsorship is definitely an area that can really accelerate diversity. Another best practice I would say is to actually take on some certain objectives when it comes to diversity and inclusion. What happens sometimes is that there are a lot of reasons why maybe diversity and and inclusion may not be happening in the exact way that you want it to happen. But let that not be a deterrent. Continue to take strong diversity and inclusion targets, and that could mean, just as an example, that could mean that you say that over a span of 2 years, I want to hire people who are differently abled, or I want to hire people who are, say, from a transgender community, right? Or I want to hire people with an army background, for example. So take on different targets and then look at what can I do to include that population more, right? Does it mean that I should have a resume pool that includes this group? Does that mean that I'm gonna, for example, if you talk about the differently able, right, you may need to make certain infrastructural changes to your workplace. Of course, you and I are having this conversation from our homes, which is where a lot of what the world has changed over the last 6 months as well. But a lot of times diversity and inclusion is not an overnight journey. It's a journey over a span of 1 year, 2 years. So I think it's also important to be self-motivated, or for HR to play the role of a catalyst to sort of make sure that motivation for doing work in the gender diversity or in any other diversity area sort of continues to progress. So those are three important practices that I wanted to share that I've seen success come from, and I'm sure there are many examples that you can also share with the audience, having been through a lot of great organizations yourself that you would have seen success come from as well.
So Komal, you spoke about few of the qualitative aspects, what actions organizations can take so far as including this diversity and inclusion aspect is concerned. Now, did you come across any situation in any of your organization wherein some of the leadership member, they walked up to your cabin and said, "Hey Komal, these are wonderful stuff, and being an HR leader, you're trying to drive this, but let's talk about the real impact on bottom line." So my limited question to you would be, Komal, how can we really quantify and show to our leadership members or outsiders that, hey, this is just not a good to do kind of an activity. These are the tangible benefit. If properly implemented, this can aid. Any thoughts around that, Komal?
I think that's a great question. I think as practitioners, I'm sure you've also had some of those scenarios where, you've had a question mark come on why should we have this as a priority or even a conversation point. When I think about this, I'm able to think of an example where it happened so that, one of my leaders had this question that, Komal, it's all, again, like you said, it's all very nice, to have, and it's great to put on a PPT. But, I am dealing with a situation where, because somebody is, say, for example, say for example, somebody is a new mother, right? Or somebody is of the female gender, they're not able to join late night calls, so that rapport with the team is not happening, right? And so that's a very real challenge that I think exists in the workplace as well. That different people operate in a different way, right? So what I did was I took some time to sort of sit with that problem and to not try and address it right away. I tried to see, okay, what changes in between the working styles, of people who are doing this versus who aren't doing this. And one thing that I realized was that while somebody who was not maybe participating in those, maybe evening drink sessions, for example, right? Maybe they weren't having a lot of camaraderie come from that. But I noticed that in terms of their working style, they were actually trying a lot harder when it came to having those water cooler conversations in the office and making sure that they're not missing out on some of the aspects that they would otherwise miss out on if they weren't making those additional sort of efforts. Similarly, the example that I gave of Diageo, right, where somebody, because of a certain insight that they had just because of a gender they're from, similarly for somebody who's differently abled, I've seen some programs where when people have made efforts to employ people who are differently abled, those people have brought insights that have led to changes in the product at a customer level, where you're able to tap into newer markets that you didn't, because you didn't have the access and the know-how of why am I not able to tap into that market? What's missing in my product? And because you have employees who are also, sort of champions of your product and who are able to tell you, well, this is why I can't actually use your product, or I can't have a point of view on your product. You're able to tap into insights from the market that you may not have had access to, because you can never get the advantage that they can get. A very simple sort of, comparison I would draw is that when somebody is, say, for example, you don't have a certain ability, right? You have certain other abilities that are more enhanced or heightened. Why is that? That's nature's way of helping you deal with something else that's different, right? And so similarly, I think each of us brings something very unique to the table. And that's the whole proposition I feel with diversity, that each person brings something very unique to the table. And if they're able to tap into that, it's almost like saying I'm able to see the entirety of the universe that today I'm not able to have visibility to, because this is my experience and what I can see basis that. The moment we're able to tap into other people's experiences and have empathy for those experiences, we're able to translate that to how exactly does that add to my bottom line, how exactly does that add to my profitability and my business objective, and not just a good to have. So I have seen people who, when they've had people who are differently abled, it's directly added to market insights for them. Or when they've had gender diversity people, they've had direct market insights that have led them to different decisions. So that's where I would say there's a very real business outcome associated with diversity and inclusion.
Fantastic. So any inputs to practicing HR managers, what and how should they make a beginning if they have not done anything in this space, or organizations where already there are plenty of interventions in place, but still, as a practitioner, you would like to give few inputs, what to do, what not to do in this space?
Honestly, I think it's a very individual sort of, area of interest that sometimes you want to choose what you want to do, which is to say that there may be a lot of theories out there. There may be a lot of concepts that exist out there when it comes to how do you go for diversity, what do you do when it comes to, being a catalyst towards diversity. But I think it's important for each person to figure out that what within diversity and inclusion do I want to be a champion for. For example, speaking personally for myself, I've been a huge proponent, throughout my 10-year career of inclusion, because I truly feel that inclusion is what helps diversity create a difference. And I think it's for each individual to figure out what is it that I want to be a champion, a proponent for. And then each of us are a part of a puzzle at the end of the day to sort of see how is it and where is it that I can play a role in terms of creating a mindset change, where, at the end of the day, unlocking diversity and inclusion for the organization needs to be a larger agenda. It can't be that it's only on my table and hence, I'm doing something. At the end of the day, it needs to be a company priority. It needs to be a leadership priority. And that will only happen when we're able to make certain leadership, sort of mindset changes as well. So I would say we're all a part of the puzzle, and we should sort of maybe try and see which part talks to me the most, and try and see where I want to create a difference. I don't think there is a one glove fits all when it comes to diversity and inclusion as an area. At least that's been true for my experience, but I don't know if there is a rule book or a cheat sheet that exists. I think it's good to try and take an interest and see what speaks to you, and then sort of basis that decide on where I want to focus on.
Experience. Gen X, Gen Yers and millennials, who are more keen to embrace as far as diversity and inclusion interventions are concerned?
I think there's definitely a lot of difference in the way each generation views diversity and various aspects of diversity. I think one of the changes that I have seen between these three generations especially is, I think when it comes to Gen X, possibly the conversation was just starting out, because diversity and inclusion is still a very new area. It's not that it's existed even within the HR domain since the beginning, right? So I think it's something that people are getting a lot more consciousness of in the last decade, and I think in the last 5 or 6 years even more so. So I think the consciousness is something that's been building for both Gen X and Gen Y. I think Gen Z, because of their social conditioning being very different, because I feel like between Gen X and Gen Y, the social conditioning is different, but the difference is not as vast as it is with millennials. With millennials, the social conditioning is completely different. They see the world in a different, way altogether. So I feel like somewhere they're a lot more conscious. Millennials are a lot more conscious, and thereby a lot of what we talk about, right, in the HR domain about, as practitioners, about unconscious bias, for example, right? I think that's something that's a bigger challenge for Gen X and for Gen Y than it is for millennials. I think for millennials, they are a lot more sort of naturally conscious about this, and hence they see the world in different ways than people from Gen X and from Gen Y. And at the end of the day, I think it's all of our social conditioning is what drives how we see the world and how we view diversity and inclusion as well. So I think that's where it comes from. And I think it truly is a mindset at the end of the day. I've come across leaders who are very sort of young in their career journey, but extremely conscious when it comes to, what's the role and why should we play that role when it comes to diversity. And I've seen some, amazing leaders have a similar focus, who are very senior in their journey as well. And again, on the flip side, I've seen, leaders who are very young in their journey and have absolutely no belief in, diversity as an important factor. And similarly, senior leaders who also don't have. So I truly think that rank and file is not something that affects it. I think at the end of the day, we are all such unique beings, just like our fingerprint is completely different one person to another, and just like our DNA is so different one person to another, so is our mindset, right? And even our mindset, if you think about it, are you and I the same people we were 10 years ago? We are not. Will we be the same people that we are today 10 years down the line? No, we won't. we'll go through our experiences that will shape who we are as people. So I think, sometimes when I have also interacted with leaders for whom this is not a priority, I have to also, remind myself to take a step back, be patient, and also see where is the readiness for it, take a step forward, and see how can I build that readiness over a period of time, as opposed to also, being somebody who says, no, but this has to be a priority because it's coming from headquarters, or it's, it's part of a PPT, or, it's something that someone at some time said it's good to have, or it's an active conversation externally. I think at the end of the day, if a leader has not internalized it, they will not be a true sponsor for it, and they will not be somebody who really wants to make a difference. So this is something that truly has to come from within, and all you can do is take a step forward, one step forward at a time.
And Komal, we can go on and on with our discussion, but yeah, we have a time constraint also. But thank you very much for taking out time and sharing your expertise and participating in this fireside chat, and addressing all my viewers. And thanks a ton. And we will again catch up maybe on some other topic, and would love to have you again join us in Dr. HR. Thank you so very much, Komal, for your time.
Thanks so much, Anil. It was lovely having this conversation with you, and look forward to some of the comments, the inputs, the questions that will also come from the audience, I'm sure. One parting example that I want to leave everyone with is, as Indians, and I think Indian food is popular not just in India but across the world, and it's popular because of its spices, right? And we have so many spices that exist in our Indian flavor universe. If you think about making an Indian dish, and you have to put various different flavors into it, right? And each dish is different. Without each of those spices, somewhere that final outcome will not be that great. And so sometimes that's exactly what diversity is. It's about adding various different flavors for that final outcome to be that much more enriched. And I sort of identifying every flavor for the uniqueness that it brings to the final outcome. So that was just one parting thought that I wanted to leave everyone with. Thanks a lot for taking out the time and for inviting me to this channel, Anil.
Thank you so much, Komal.